No de crisis y menos de recesión, de desaceleración.
La prima de riesgo española se disparó hoy en la apertura de mercado hasta los 470 puntos.
Se va a proceder a una revisión del modelo de prestaciones por desempleo, garantizando que éstas no generen efectos desincentivadores en la búsqueda de empleo.
Igual que estás percibiendo la energía de la próxima llamada.
No, Vicky, aquí había cosas muy claras. Y es una pena, porque no soy yo, sino es ella, que no ha querido con él.
¡Del desaparecido! ¡Gol del muerto! Había que dilapidarlo, laminarlo, machacarlo, hundirlo y quitarlo.
Yo no sé los demás qué dirán, pero a mí me gustan grandes.
5 centímetros me ha crecido.
Así es, y el grosor, perfecta.
Pero si se suman 2 manzanas, pues dan 2 manzanas. Y si se suman una manzana y una pera, nunca pueden dar 2 manzanas.
If you're looking for trouble, you came to the right place.
Well, get out in that kitchen and rattle those pots and pans. Get out in that kitchen and rattle those pots and pans. Well, I roll the breakfast of a hungry bird.
Lucila, no me dejes por favor. Oh, Lucila, no me dejes por favor. Te lo pido de rodillas, no me vayas a dejar.
Love me both day and night. I never grumbling or fussing. Always treat me right.
Y te damos la bienvenida a Espíritu de Rock and Roll con especial ilusión. Al otro lado de la cristalera, como ya es habitual, a los controles. Te saluda Lorena Doñoro y delante del micrófono, un servidor, Daniel Acirón.
Come here, black woman. And sit on Daddy's knee. Well, I've got something to tell you, pretty mama. Don't you holler, Lordy. I'm going out to Texas. To hear that wild ox moan. And if his moaning don't suit me, black woman, I'm gonna drive my bell cow home. Don't your kitchen feel lonesome? When your biscuit rollers go.
Black Woman abre Black Cowboys, el último trabajo de Don Flemons, y con él vamos a hablar. We will speak about cows, work, civil rights, and Western films. And we will do this because Don Flemons is a musician, but also a music scholar. We will speak about this project, and we will speak about the United States. Good morning, Dom.
Good morning, such pleasure.
Comentamos que vamos a hablar sobre ganado, sobre trabajo, sobre los derechos civiles y sobre las películas del oeste, porque todo esto aparece en este Black Cowboys que ha estado sonando en emisiones anteriores y que hoy vamos a tener el gusto de descifrar junto a su hacedor, quien ya nos comentaba estuvo más de 2 años trabajando en este proyecto en el que hay mucho de documentación. Why do you decide make a debut album with this project?
Well, this album came out of a couple of different things that were happening at one time. I'm originally from Phoenix, Arizona. Much of my musical career has been based out of North Carolina, so I wanted to find a way to reference back to my home state, my hometown in one way. That was one part of it. The second part came from when I was actually visiting back in Arizona. I came across a book called The Negro Cowboys, and one of the main things that it talked about was that 1 in 4 cowboys that helped settle the West were African-American cowboys working alongside the Anglo cowboys and the Mexican vaquero, who was actually the original cowboy in the North American continent. So that was where the project began. And shortly after that, I came across an album called Black Texicans, which featured a lot of field recordings of John and Alan Lomax of black cowboys. And the album claimed that it was one of the few audio examples we have of this rich tradition of black cowboys. And so that gave me a few different places to start. And as I delved into the Lomax's story specifically, I found that black cowboys were part of John Lomax's studies when he made his first book, which was called Cowboy Songs and Frontier Ballads. And that was a very foundational academic study of cowboy music, because of course that's music of working class people, and at that time, most people in mainstream U.S. society didn't think that those working class people had anything to contribute to culture. And so John Lomax, he decided to put this book out, and then later he worked with black folk singers collecting Negro folk songs, as they used to call it way back then. But the idea that black cowboys were a part of this earlier part of his research, and it was a natural extension into his work with Negro folk songs later, I thought that was something that needed to be addressed. As I went along, I came across another collector by the name of Jack Thorpe, who he did his very first book actually 2 years before John Lomax. And Jack Thorpe wasn't a scholar. He was an enthusiast for cowboy music. And as I read Jack Thorpe's autobiography, there was a very interesting story about how when he first went out west to become a cowboy, he came across all of these black cowboys sitting around a campfire singing songs, and he was drawn to their songs, and that's what made him want to write down their cowboy songs. And so the black cowboys came up again and again as I began to search for representation of any type. And so with this album, I decided to go at it a few different ways. I had 4 ways I did the material. One way was taking songs with black cowboys in the stories and just having literally those songs. And that was like Goodbye Old Paint and Home on the Range are 2 particular ones like that. I didn't want to assume people knew what cowboy music was, so I put in some of the favorites, Little Joe the Wrangler, which was written by Jack Thorpe, and then also Tying Knots in the Devil's Tail. The third part was taking the black songsters of East Texas, people like Leadbelly, Henry Thomas, and Lightning Hopkins, and putting them into the context of cowboy music. And then finally, the fourth part was a couple of the instrumental tracks, which I didn't really try to focus on a story with the instrumental tracks, but I wanted to give a soundscape and a flavor to black cowboys to, so when you're listening, you could kind of be transported into this different world. One of them's like the March of Red River Valley. Red River Valley is a well-known cowboy song, and I just turned it into a fife and drum type of number just to give the impression of the Buffalo Soldiers. And I have a little bit in the liner notes talking about them, but just give an impression of like the Buffalo Soldiers. After you see all this cowboy stuff in the album, it's like it almost recedes, and then you see a little battalion of Buffalo Soldiers walking across the plains. And so I wanted to come at it with that as well, to really create I wanted to make a really well-rounded record, because I had found that this was going to be the very first album that touched upon black cowboys as a subject comprehensively, which is why also I then pitched it to Smithsonian Folkways to put it out.
¿Por qué este Black Cowboys ha sido el objeto, ha sido el disco que Don Flemons ha querido utilizar como arranque, como debut en solitario? Pues viene de formaciones anteriores como los galardonados con un Grammy Carolina Chocolate Drops. Pues nos cuenta porque, entre otras cosas, era una vuelta a sus orígenes, a su hogar, porque aunque él es nacido en Phoenix, Arizona, su familia proviene de Carolina del Norte, y desde ahí es donde pudo toparse con ese de Negro Cowboys, un libro en el que se habla de los cowboys afroamericanos, habitualmente invisibilizados, algo que le llevó a seguir investigando y que, por supuesto, le acercó a las grabaciones de los 2 Lomax, de John Avery y de Alan, de padre e hijo, quienes ya se habían encargado de registrar en diferentes discos esas canciones de tradición vaquera que eran compartidas principalmente por intérpretes negros. Un repertorio que está fijado y al que él recurrió al mismo tiempo que iba conociendo a otros coleccionistas, a otros musicólogos que en esos años, en la época dorada del salvaje oeste, iban grabando las canciones que por ahí circulaban. Considera él que es especialmente importante reivindicar la figura de quienes fueron los primeros cowboys en Estados Unidos, esos vaqueros mexicanos que también han sido perjudicados por la imagen que daría después Hollywood de todos esos años. Vamos a entrar al detalle, vamos a hablar sobre las pequeñas historias que conforman este gran relato, este Black Cowboys.
$1 bill, $2 bill, ain't no bill like a railroad bill. Take away that makeup, child, no, it ain't none of mine. If you keep wearing them false eyelashes, gal, you're gonna go stone blind with that railroad bill. $1 bill, $2 bill, ain't no bill like a railroad bill. Running to the station, ticket in my hand. My gal done stole my old gray goose. I'm gonna shoot her where she stand with that railroad bill. $1 bill, $2 bill, ain't no bill like a railroad bill. Now it's $1, $2, $3 bill, ain't no bill like a railroad bill. I'm going back west,
mama mine with that railroad bill. $1 bill, $2 bill. Ain't no bill like a railroad bill. Ooh, where's my baby? Ooh, where's my child? I see your man running out the window, baby. Now your papa's gonna go stone wild with that railroad bill. $1 bill, $2 bill. Ain't no bill like a railroad bill. Now it's $1, $2, $3 bill. Ain't no bill like a railroad bill. Oh, play it out. Oh, yeah. It's red wine in the winter, baby. It's spiced rum in the spring. But I don't need no liquor, baby, to hear my hammer ring with that railroad bill. $1 bill, $2 bill. Ain't no bill like a railroad bill. Now it's $1, $2, $3 bill. Ain't no bill like a railroad bill, yeah. Ain't no bill like a railroad bill.
$1 bill. Vamos a hablar sobre lo que supuso la migración de afroamericanos del sur al oeste y de cómo muchos de ellos acabaron trabajando en los ranchos. Una historia que comparte Don Flemons a través de su último trabajo de ese Black Cowboys. I will try to explain with you the movement of these more than 5,000 black cowboys that serve on the ranch crews, people that before had worked in the cattle in the plantations and later began to work with cattle trails. How important is for these people knowing the work before? I suppose they are more prepared than other people to do this job.
Well, this is a story that really goes back a very long way. I guess, when I really started breaking down the history, it goes back to people like Christopher Columbus bringing African ranchers over to Hispaniola. So African ranchers have been a part of the North American continent from the first moment that they made colonies, basically. And so for the purpose of the album, I decided to pull it forward into the post-emancipation era, so like around the 1865, 1866, going into the around the 1960s, because if you think of plantation culture in the American South moving westward just one step at a time, all of a sudden the states are not just 48 states that are completely formed like we think of them now in the modern era, but you have to think of west of Tennessee as being the end of the United States, and then over decades they were able to expand the territory and the land. And so to do that, they had to use slaves at first when slavery was still happening in the United States, and then after slavery there was still a need for laborers to go out and to be able to work on these ranches. But as I started to delve into it, I found this other story that began to develop as well, where you had these African American people freed from slavery from the first time, trying to figure out how to build a new life for themselves. And so that came in any variety of forms, from carrying the mail to being a cowboy to preachers moved out west with their whole congregations to build new lives for themselves. Sawmill workers, that's what my grandfather did. That's got him from Texas to go to Arizona, was he followed the sawmill work after the Second World War. And so you have the succession of movement out west that the people brought their music with them, and they brought the skills that they had learned in previous generations into their new environment. And when it comes to the civil rights era, then you just find a natural extension out of that cowboy work going into the work on the trains and the railroad, because that was another part of the expansion out west, was first getting the land, and then there was building the railroad to be able to travel on the land.
We will speak about the railroad, but first we will try to translate this. Estamos hablando sobre cómo ese gran movimiento afecta a la manera de trabajar en las comunidades. Nos comenta Dom que congregaciones enteras se trasladan después de la Guerra de Secesión al oeste de los Estados Unidos, donde sí, muchos de ellos trabajan en los ranchos. Hablamos de más de 5.000 cowboys negros trabajando, formando parte de esos, ya como personas libres, de esas plantillas en los ranchos, pero nos recuerda que los afroamericanos, en un primer lugar africanos traídos por Colón a las colonias españolas, ya habían estado trabajando como rancheros, dedicándose a cuidar del ganado. El trabajo que supone cuidar del ganado es entendido como una nueva manera de buscarse la vida. Hay otras, nos habla incluso de cómo tuvo que trabajar su padre, pero si ponemos el foco en la historia, en las historias contadas en este Black Cowboys, tenemos que hablar en un primer momento de el cuidado del ganado y de los cattle trails, de esos paseos de ganado que hemos visto decenas de veces en las películas del oeste, ¿no? De cómo había que transportar el ganado, llevar esas cabezas de ganado por un oeste realmente inhóspito hasta un nuevo comprador. Y esto cambia, y ahí habíamos hecho una pausa completamente, cuando se empieza a construir la Transcontinental Railroad, una línea de ferrocarril que permite recorrer América de un lado a otro. Sirve además este tren y este desarrollo tecnológico como símbolo. We can understand the train as a symbol of the American progress also.
Absolutely. Well, if you think of, especially since we're here in Spain, if you think of the colonial powers moving out west into a brand new land and having to build it from this small plot of land all the way out west with all of the different colonial powers that were, because we're more or less going in between the time of, like, let's say the early 1800s going into the mid 1960s. So there's a lot of time that goes on. But as people were continuing to build up, the railroad became this new technological advance that people really hadn't seen in that form before. And the fact that you could get from one side of the country to the other, it was really great for business as well. But the Black Cowboys, of course, fit into this in the context of being Pullman porters, which is somewhere between like a sky cap at the airport or a butler, because you would have a Pullman porter that would take care of you for your whole ride across the country. So you had a single person that was serving you for all of your needs. And through that, many of these Black Cowboys that became Pullman porters, they found cachet socially because they knew the wealthy clientele, and that served them well in the civil rights era, because when people like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. wanted to do the bus boycotts, he reached out to the Pullman porters and asked for their advice for how they should handle such an extensive boycott and protest. And so it's really interesting that to see that the Black Cowboys have this prehistory in the Pullman porter culture, that they were cowboys and then some of them went back to early slavery. It's amazing to see that there were people that lived that had so many different experiences of work and life, and then they evolved into what they became later, which when it all comes down to dust, there's a million stories of what people decide to do.
Habla Flemons de que cuando empieza a desarrollarse esa nueva línea de ferrocarril, ese Transcontinental Railroad, muchos de los afroamericanos que habían trabajado como cowboys empiezan a formar parte de la Pullman Company como porteadores, como asistentes a los viajeros. Sirve esta nueva profesión para ponerse en contacto con otros valores culturales, lo que les acaba dando cierto caché, y llegado a un punto conforman en 1925 la primera unión sindical completamente negra, formando lo que es conocido como el Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, algo que nos explica Flemons también sirvió de base al movimiento que se generaría años más tarde, que tendría especial apogeo en los años 50 y 60, de los derechos civiles, teniendo una conexión clara con el doctor Martin Luther King Jr. Hay una de las muchas historias pequeñas incluidas en este Black Cowboys y en esas líneas, en ese folleto que va cargado de información que escribe Don Flemons, que nos interesa especialmente, y es cómo estos porteadores, estos asistentes en viaje, empiezan a mover discos, empiezan a distribuir 78 pulgadas a través de la línea de ferrocarril, llevando lo que eran conocido, lo que por aquel entonces se bautizaba como discos raciales, al sur y moviéndolos por los Estados Unidos. For me, it's very interesting knowing that these Pullman porters begin distributing the 78s using the railroad.
That's right, and because you have to think of it like in segregated times when white and black were separated. Then they really put this into place around 1900 in the United States. There was not that there wasn't racial discrimination before that, but they set Jim Crow laws into place in 1900, so that caused for strict segregation. So within that, you had specific all-black towns that grew within cities. And so you had, you'd have the mainstream city, but then you have a black section of town. They say across the tracks in the United States, but across the tracks you would have a black section of town that was just specifically insular. And so different towns, some of them would be very poor, but then you had other examples like in Oklahoma, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, they had a place called Black Wall Street, where it was a place where all of the business-minded black people decided to go. So basically, once they removed the Native American people from different sections of the United States. They put them into what they called the Indian Territory, which was a big section of land in the middle of the United States. And so within that, slowly and steadily, they began to parcel land off. And when Oklahoma was parceled off, there was what they call a land grab. So basically you had open land, and then people could go out there and they could make their claims on their land. And Oklahoma was slated to become the first all-black state. And so they tried a land grab for Oklahoma, and they weren't successful with it. But it brought so many different African-American people there that it was a very thriving community with its own banks, lawyers, doctors, and things like that. And then there was a very sad tragedy where there was a race riot where they burned down the whole town. But so this is a history, though, that, again, it ended in tragedy. But to know that a place like this existed, this is what makes this part of Black Western history so interesting, is that it's not just strictly cowboys, but there are pioneers moving out west, all over the place. Again, the key word is freedom. What do you do with that freedom when you've been given it? And the West is really one of those stories that is very telling. And then politically as well, the legislation, as they created each of the states in the United States, there was a decision that had to be made whether it was pro-slavery or it was anti-slavery. So every time they created a state, they had to address African-American people in some sort of way, whether it was directly or whether it was socially. So this is also happening in the backdrop of this entire story. So when it comes to delivering these 78s, these Pullman porters, they didn't go to the main parts of town. They would just go from train stop to the black section of towns. Mm-hmm. And so that allowed them to bring things like the Chicago Defender, which was in all-black paper at the time, and also 78 RPM records, because they were the local distributors that were going straight to the audiences that the newspapers and these media outlets were going to. So the Pullman porters became an essential part of that. And they got some money on the side, too.
discos de 78 revoluciones por minuto, pero también periódicos negros se distribuían a través de la Pullman Company, yendo a la parte negra de esas ciudades segregadas, yendo, como nos explicaba Don Flemons, de estación en estación, llegando al público objetivo, sirviendo además para que quedase algo de dinero en aquellas personas que se encargaban de hacer ese trabajo de distribución, siendo personal oficial de la Pullman Company. Como consecuencia de una América segregada, se han invisibilizado estas historias que hoy Don Flemons comparte y que nos permiten entender una identidad, acercarnos a una identidad diversa, muy alejada de la que conocemos, blanca y homogénea. Y no solo la cultura afroamericana ha sido invisibilizada para construir ese estereotipo blanco y homogéneo, sino que también se ha dejado de lado lo que aportaron los mexicanos y los nativos americanos. John Henry y los Vaqueros, Black Cowboys, Don Flemons. We're speaking about how the Afro-American people, these Black Cowboys in concrete, was disappear for the great history. And you speak also in this album about the Mexicans and the Native Americans. Because when we read the dime novels or see the Western films, or in the past the people go to see the Buffalo Bill show and this kind of Wild West shows, there are not Mexican people in the good position. There are no Native American in the good position. So why do you think they try to have this great story without the other kind of people?
Well, I think it's just a matter of, it gives you have a whole different worldview when you start getting into the story of Native American culture and Mexican American culture. It just becomes this whole other gigantic narrative. You know, that's part of the reason why I spoke about them just briefly within the notes, but I couldn't get deep into the story of each in a you know, because one thing I was surprised to hear, because I asked several cowboy singers if, for example, if there were any Mexican songs that had been translated into English, for example. So you know, a lot of times when a song is in a foreign language, you might have a translation that would be an English version, and then that might become popular. But most of them said that never really happened out west. It was, if you learned your Mexican songs or Mexican repertoire, you just learned it because that was a far more dominant culture than you as the single individual. And then being from Arizona, you know, a lot of times in the United States, we get caught on the issues of black and white, but especially out in the Southwest, I mean, it's the Mexican population far exceeds any other demographic, and so that was something that I wanted to address that in some sort of way, because that essentially puts tax on another 400 years of history, because then you find that the North American continent isn't just the United States, the entire history of the world. Then you find that it's sectioned up into different, based on the different empires that had colonies out there, and then as the United States was formed, you found that slowly and steadily they bought up all the land, and then they cultivate it in the way that we now see it. But yeah, I think that a lot of that has to do with the story is just too big to describe, and then the other part of it is in terms of media and popular entertainment. Everybody except for the Anglo cowboy culture, they were left out of the narrative just because of the nature of how the story of the cowboys was built. You mentioned the dime store novels. That was one of the first ways that they began to sell cowboy culture back to people. Because we have to remember that my album is focused mostly on working cowboys that were out on the range. That's the idea of the history there. But the cowboy culture begins to split off around the 1890s into the 1900s, during a little bit of that same period, and you start finding that people like Buffalo Bill Cody is a perfect example of a proprietor who did the first Western show that went all over the world. So people's perception of what the West is, cowboys and Indians, a lot of that comes from them physically seeing Buffalo Bill at those early shows, and then the culture has just continued to perpetuate the same stories over and over again. Then when Gene Autry, the singing cowboy, comes in, that then solidifies this idea of what a cowboy should be. But when we speak of the history of black cowboys, when you find that many of them just stopped being cowboys and just transitioned into other types of work, you find that that's one of the holes in history, is that there was a demographic that just they weren't interested in trying to write down the history, but the demographic that was interested in writing the history, they wrote it in the way that they wanted to see it. But with black cowboys, though, you can't get away from how much information's out there. Unlike when I worked with my previous group, the Carolina Chocolate Drops, we did African American string band music. There's just there are a lot of very small references that you can make into a bigger story, but with black cowboys, it's the exact opposite. There's so much information, so many accounts of black cowboys that it's overwhelming. And just to know that it has, I want to say it's been sidelined. I don't want to say it's necessarily been buried, but it got sidelined, and just no one has really ever gone back and extensively brought black cowboys into the forefront.
We will jump in the timeline and we will speak about hip-hop, because when we focus the attention in this time, we can see you explain very well how the black cowboys was acknowledged. But right now, popular music in the United States and in the world, we can see, is pop music is now hip hop music with a lot of black artists. So how will deal the great story with this, with all these black people being very famous, being icons?
Well, one of the things that I've tried to reach into on this particular record is emphasizing the validity and the power of vernacular culture, of working class culture, and then when it comes to black popular entertainment, I try to raise up rural black culture, because a lot of black entertainment is based on the idea of urban, new, progressive ideas, and just being able to acknowledge and to be able to showcase rural black culture has been a key part of my work through my whole musical career. And Black Cowboys is no different in that way. So let's take a guy like Travis Scott, for example, very popular rapper. But he's always repping that he's from Houston, from Texas. And Houston is... It's a town in Texas that is it's a major city, but it's a very rural place. And then if you go maybe 15, 20 miles outside of Houston, it gets a lot more rural very quickly. Now, I don't know where Travis Scott is from specifically, if he's from Houston proper, if he's from one of the provinces out of it. But that's something that I've always tried to acknowledge so that when people reference back, they can say, wait a second, I recognize the story, and it sparks what I like to call cultural memory, to where when you hear it, whether it's you're directly connecting the song that you're hearing with the memory, or if for some reason the song sparks a memory in your mind to say, wait a second, my grandfather or my cousin or my uncle or somebody is connected to the story somehow. That's what I've always tried to put out there. And it's been interesting to see. There's a fellow, Lil Nas X, and he did a song, Old Town Road, which is it's somewhat about black cowboys. He's a black cowboy performer, and he's putting that out there. And it's become one of the biggest songs in the world. I guess maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago it came out, but it's just all of a sudden now in the States I'm seeing all these people talking about cowboy, doing cowboy albums or cowboy songs or something like that. And it's funny that less than a year after I've put Black Cowboys out, and I got a nomination for a Grammy. Now to see that cowboy albums are starting to become more prevalent within popular culture, that's something that I feel good about. Because on my end, I went for the traditional route so that someone else doesn't have to go the traditional route with it. They can just do whatever type of cowboy album they feel like. But on my end, it was all about making sure that people could understand that story, and that for African American people that are connected to Western culture, whether by blood or whether by 1 or 2 generations removed, they can relate, and they can find some history that they might not have heard before.
Right now, with Donald Trump as President of the United States, it is harder try to show that American identity is diverse and is not only white.
Yeah, well, for me, it wasn't that hard with this particular album because I made the album before. I've been working on this album for about 2 years, so it was a little bit before Donald Trump was elected into the presidency. So I was not necessarily thinking about him when I made the album, but the idea of a multifaceted, multicultural West has always been something appealing to me. I'm multiracial myself. My father's black and my mom is Mexican American, so the idea of multiracial Southwestern people is something that's been there from the very beginning. So when I made the album, I wanted it to be multifaceted because that's a part of the Western culture. That's part of what makes it so intriguing and so beautiful in a way, is because people were moving out west to put the American dream to the test. And you have different types of black people. You have upper class, middle class, lower class black people, working people, doctors, because even things like a doctor, like a doctor could settle in a place and that could make a whole town off of that one doctor, because the segregation was so strict at that time that they wouldn't take black and Mexican patients. So you'd have doctors that would come out and then they would take black and Mexican patients, and then you could have a whole neighborhood that could thrive on that alone. And so that was part of what this idea with Black Cowboys was and was to put that out there so that people could, I think, acknowledge it, because I think a lot of people already knew that it existed in one form or another.
Nos cuenta que desde el comienzo él ha tenido muy presente el valor multirracial de la cultura del sudoeste. Él mismo proviene de una familia multirracial, su madre es mexicana, su padre es negro, y también recuerda que cuando empezó a trabajar en este Black Cowboys, Donald Trump todavía no había sido elegido, pero con lo cual no le afectó directamente en el proceso de investigación, pero que sí que es algo que él siempre ha tenido muy presente, ¿no? El presentar esa diversidad que conforma los Estados Unidos.
Now he's a U.S. Marshal and a Lone Ranger. He is a U.S. Marshal was a man way out west, rode around this country with a star on his breast. Every white man and Indian tribe knew he was the baddest man that ever was alive. Now he's a U.S. Marshal and a Lone Ranger. He is a Lone Ranger, Bass Reeves is his name. Broad-shouldered and 6 feet tall, rode a sorrel that could outrun them all. Master of a pistol, master of disguise, looked every man he caught now dead in the eyes. Now he's a U.S. Marshal and a Lone Ranger. He is a Lone Ranger, Bass Reeves is his name. Born a slave down in Arkansas, lived with his master and his dear old ma. Mama said, son, you ain't free, but you can do anything you want to if the mister don't see. Now he's a U.S. Marshal and a Lone Ranger. He is a Lone Ranger, Bass Reeves is his name. I'll tell you another thing. Master called Bass Reeves to a gambling game. Bass's freedom was the stake that he made. Master cheated, you oughta heard the sound of Bass's hoofbeats as Master hit the ground. Now he's a U.S. Marshal and a Lone Ranger. He is a Lone Ranger, Bass Reeves is his name. Yo! Bass Reeves break into song, he get down to business and it won't be long. Whether in Muskogee, 100 miles around, they call him Bass Reeves, he's bound to track you down. Cause he's a U.S. Marshal and a Lone Ranger. He is a Lone Ranger, Bass Reeves is his name.
He's a Lone Ranger. Escuchamos Black Cow, es el último trabajo de Don Flemons, que forma parte de las African American Legacy Recordings, una serie de grabaciones editadas por el Smithsonian. El Smithsonian, el museo que se encarga de preservar la cultura estadounidense, que a través de su sello Smithsonian Folkways Recordings publica este disco en formato físico. Nos comentaba Don Flemons a micro cerrado que, vinculado como él está a la institución, más allá de este proyecto, coordinando diferentes actividades, ha tenido hasta la oportunidad de tocar la guitarra de Mississippi John Hurt. Hoy no es la guitarra de Mississippi John Hurt la que va a sonar, sino el banjo de Don Flemons.
All right. Well, we're going to do a little bit of Charmin' Betsy for you.
Go down the mountain to a lead. If I never see you tomorrow, you Lord remember me.
Want everything that you see. Last time I seen Charming Betsy, she wearing that ball and chain. Yes, I'm going down the mountain, Charming Betsy, going down the mountain to believe. If I never see you no more, do Lord remember me. Betsy, going down the mountain to believe. If I never see you no more, do Lord remember me. Now Charming Betsy's going on down the line, wine glass in her hand, going after her old man. These are the very words she said. Oh my baby, oh take me back. I done the world, Lord, take me back. Morning, don't seem wrong. You gonna call me, I'll be gone. You turn around 2 and 3 times. Say my babe, take me back, take me back, take me back. Oh my babe, take me back. Make me one pound on your floor. Make me one pound on your floor. Oh, make a pallet soft and low. Make it so your man will never know. Oh, make it so your man will never know. Make it so your man will never know. Oh, make a pallet soft and low. Make it so your man will never know.
Charming Betsy. Escuchamos a Don Flemons al banjo y a la flauta de cañas. Estábamos disfrutando de Don Flemons en vivo y es algo que puedes hacer esta noche en la Sala Clamores en Madrid. A las 8:30 de la tarde estará Don Flemons actuando aquí, en la capital del reino, para hacer mañana lo propio en Zaragoza, en el Rock and Blues, y el jueves en el Centro Cultural Golferix en Barcelona.
When you get down to Holbrook, you won't find me there. Good Lord, I caught the first thing smoking down the road somewhere. Caught the first thing smoking down the road somewhere. Till I called my steel pony and boys, I'm gonna ride. Getting far too old to follow this here herd. Good Lord, I caught the first thing smoking down the road somewhere. Caught the first thing smoking down the road somewhere. Till I call my steel pony and boys, I'm gonna ride. Go ahead, Six. Now they call me Mr. Flemons, 'cause I'm a pool porter now. Good Lord, I caught the first thing smoking down the road somewhere. Caught the first thing smoking down the road somewhere. Till I call my steel pony and boys, I'm gonna ride. Go ahead and get it one time, Six. Yep.
they call me Mr. Flemons, 'cause I done towed that guitar down. Good Lord, I caught the first thing smoking down the road somewhere. Now when you get over there, you won't find me. Fella called me Steel Pony, and boys, I'm gonna ride. Get it one last time, sis.
Steel Pony Blues, From the Trails to the Rails. Thank you so much for coming, Dom. It was such a pleasure.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Os recordamos que esta noche podéis ver a Don Flemons presentando su Black Cowboys en la Sala Clamores de Madrid, mañana en el Rock and Blues de Zaragoza y el jueves en el CC Golferix de Barcelona. Nos marchamos dándote un beso y compartiendo The March Red River Valley.